Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Outside Insider podcast here on Philly Sports Network with myself, Liam Jenkins. I hope you're ready to buckle up, strap yourselves in and dive into what has been a mediocre week of Eagles sports news, really. I mean, we were expecting big waves and big headlines, and the problem was, if you listened to last week's show, that I made a statement in the closing segment of last week's episode, where I stated that if the Eagles sign Ronald Darby within 10 minutes of me recording this podcast, I'm going to have a mental breakdown. And what happened 20 minutes after the podcast went live? You guessed it, Ronald Darby back with the Eagles. Now, if you've been around the Philly Sports Network YouTube channel, you'll know my reaction to this. You'd have read the articles, you'd have seen the videos, you'd have seen the recaps. There's a lot of ground that I've trodden quite aggressively on Ronald Darby, but maybe we'll touch on it just a little bit before we get into the other news this week. But if you are new around here and you're thinking, wait, how is this British guy talking about an Eagles cornerback and not a teabag? Well, now's the time to subscribe. We're on Stitcher, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, and just about everywhere else, still except Google Play. We're working on that one. But if you could hit subscribe, I know a lot of you guys watch this on YouTube again, which is absolutely incredible, so shout out to every single one of you. But if you have access to the iTunes platform, or a link in the description below that takes you to Apple Podcasts, if you could just rate it 5 stars, subscribe, and never open it again, that would be it. Well, not amazing, but it certainly helps the podcast, so it's your best way to show support. It would be brilliant if you could do so in that way. If not, don't worry, I love you all the same. But, ladies and gentlemen, we have to start today with a crisis. Well, maybe 2 crises. What is the plural for crisis? Crises or crisi? I'm going to go with crisi because it sounds a little bit more adventurous. Like I'm having a crisi, a dual crisis, right? Number 1, I have to apologise in advance if my voice sounds a little bit croaky, if I'm slurring my speech a little bit. I promise I have not had a very bad weekend. Essentially what has happened is America's gone into daylight savings and my body clock is all kinds of messed up, and when I have an extended week off to focus on the website, I sort of get attached to that body clock and I end up going to bed at 5 a.m. and then when I've got to be up at 6 a.m. for work in my second job and working 9 till 6, everything goes a little bit haywire and I'm kind of dealing with the consequences of that. So this may be a podcast where I talk absolute rubbish, like all of them really, but just a little bit more than normal, so please bear with me. I've got a cup of coffee, a mug of coffee here, so try and guide me through. So if I sound a little bit off or my voice sounds a little bit more husky, almost like I've hit puberty, then you'll know why. But the crisis is, if any of you follow me on Twitter, cheap plug, at Liam Jenkins 21, that there seems to be an identity crisis. Because sometime last week, during my, I think one of my YouTube videos, someone left a comment saying, "Hey LJ, if the Eagles don't draft Devin Bush at 25, and I was like, whoa, hold on a minute. Where's LJ come from? Like, I've never been given... My last nickname was Ankles at school because my mum shrunk my school trousers to the point the bottoms wouldn't even reach my ankles and I was bullied for it. That was my last nickname, okay? LJ sounds cool. And I was like, hang on, move over kids at the back of the bus. Your boy's got a nickname now. Like, LJ, nice to meet you. And I put it on, like, Twitter jokingly, thinking nothing of it, because I wouldn't really want to be going around being called LJ. And somehow, this coalition of followers, or viewers of my content, or whatever you guys want to describe yourself, I would just call you the best humans on earth, really, but, you know, we can't be too flirty this early in the show, just decided to start calling me LJ all the time, for everything. And I don't know how I feel about it. Because I can't tell if it's like, it's just being memed and it's kind of blown up a little bit and everyone's catching on. Or if it's genuinely a good nickname to have. So, if you're listening to this and you're going to leave a comment, like, you dictate my future. My whole credibility relies on you. Is it going to be in a few weeks' time, maybe, when some radio station asks me on to talk about the draft or the Eagles, and they go, so joining us now from Philly Sports Network is LJ, or is it going to be Liam Jenkins? Like, my reputation comes down to you, aka the listener. So you've got to shape this for me. You've got to put me in the right spot. I'm leaving all this to you. I'm staying out. I can't give myself or retract nicknames. Ankles stay with me until the age of 19. I am now 23. It's been a good 4 years. I do not want to live being thrown in skips. But anyway, I had to get that out there. I wanted to address that. Thank you to everyone that's been tweeting it. It's been a good laugh over the last 7 days. And on those last 7 days notes, obviously I think that the main topic has been Ronald Darby and what the Eagles are doing with him. And I think by now, if you listen to last show, I got very uptight and aggressive. And that uptight and aggressiveness spilled out into a very aggressive rant when Darby re-signed. Because, as projected in the podcast, I said that shouldn't have happened within the first 10 minutes of me launching it. This is the thing with this podcast now. We kind of just break news by accident. It's happened 3 weeks in a row. So basically, this is going to go up and something's going to happen about 6 minutes later. That's the way the cookie crumbles. But upon reflection, obviously I've had a week now to look back at this trade and look at the figures. Now it's all been finalised, and do I feel better or worse about the move? Am I a little bit warmer to Ronald of Darbyton, or am I just the same cold-hearted, he can't tackle LJ son of a gun? And well, the answer is unfortunately I'm in exactly the same spot. I don't feel much better about it. I understand that the move is a little bit cheaper than it first looked because of the guaranteed and the incentivised cap space and all of that sort of thing. However, as mentioned in last week's show, I think the Eagles have got such a young secondary right now. Like, you've got, I would say, outside of Josh Hawkins, maybe every single corner there could be a starter. Whether that's Cravon LeBlanc. And talking of Captain Cravon, I did reach out. We're trying to get him on the podcast. And a few other things as well. But Captain Cravon, whether it's Maddox, whether it's Douglas, whether it's Sidney Jones, there's a lot of question marks about all of these guys. I think it deserves one big article. But if this is the year, okay, and a lot of people are looking at this Darby retention and saying, well, by having Darby back in the fold, it gives the Eagles that flexibility to see what they've got in the younger guys. And yes, it does, on the sideline, watching Ronald Darby miss tackles. I don't know what you're going to see out of Ronald. I understand depth is important, but you don't need to pay that much for it. Ronald Darby is a top tier, not top tier, maybe top half of the league quarterback. Yes, he's the quickest cornerback on the team. Yes, that's going to help him defend deep routes and also, recover from those missed tackles he makes. However, I just feel that if we're going to look at this as the Eagles are buying themselves development time, they're not. It wouldn't surprise me if one of these corners gets traded before the draft. It really wouldn't. And again, I go back to the fact that it took Dexter McDougal coming on and off the street for Jim Schwartz to eventually play Rasul Douglas. It would not surprise me if Rasul Douglas was a name that was being shopped around occasionally here. The younger corners are getting to the end of their lifespan with Philadelphia in a contract sense. They've got 1 or 2 years left each. And if you're going to waste one of those years for some of those guys on just special teams, or maybe they can't win out a role in training camp. And if they do, what if we get to training camp and Sidney Jones or Avonte Maddox just outshines Ronald Darby? Darby's only on a prove-it contract. The other thing people like to use is his age. He's 25 years old. Brilliant. That doesn't matter. Because if we're brutally honest here, Ronald Darby, you're not going to get a development out of him because you're not going to go and see him from 25 to 26 to 27 to 28. He's on a 1-year prove-it deal. So you can't factor that into the discussion. It's not like they're buying him in or retaining him to develop. So I just think that entire thing is the most un-Howie move of the offseason. And I don't mean, it's not a bad move. It's a good move. It solidifies depth. It brings back a starter. He is a clear top tier or top half of the league cornerback. He's quick. He fits the system to an extent. I understand why the Eagles want him around. My problem was that he worked so hard to free up cap space. You then throw that much at a player that has missed 15 games in 2 years. Or if I told you a running back, a tight end, a receiver, a defensive, whoever missed 15 games in 2 years, and you're going to pay him $8 million, you're going to say no. So it didn't feel like the most resourceful move that arguably the most resourceful GM in the league has made. And I did just want to get that out there because I feel like after a week of looking back, again, I'm not biased here. I understand why the Eagles have brought him back. I understand why he's running around at 97 miles an hour up and down a sideline, but it doesn't mean that I'm not critical of it. And I think that video got a lot of backlash where people were saying, someone said I'm losing credibility for having an opinion, which blew my mind. So I'm always been on this fence. I mean, the whole point of this show is it brings a different perspective. And if I don't think something's smelling of roses, I'm not going to pretend it will just to please the fans of said rosebed. You know, I would much rather be honest and bring a different perspective. And if you disagree, we'll talk. That's the point of this. That's the point of the podcast. It's the point of the YouTube videos. It's trying to generate discussion. And you guys are the most active community, the most passionate community. You've all got such intellectual opinions. For the most part, apart from when you tell me to stick to soccer, because that, you know, please don't. But genuinely, it's been fun to debate. And I think everyone's got a valid argument with Ronald Darby. It's fun to talk about. But just because there is a mass disagreement with me, I'm not going to get knocked off my perch. Whereas other people may kind of fall and go, oh, no, it's a good move. I still stand by what I said. Just a little bit more kind of understanding of the reasoning behind it. Anywho, on to the week's moves. If, again, you're new around here, please hit subscribe, whether it's YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, wherever. It would be amazing if you could. And also, on that note, on iTunes, we've still not actually received a review yet, and that breaks my heart. That breaks my little heart. Do you want to see me heartbroken? Do you want to see my heart break? Stop, okay? Stop it. Get on iTunes, leave a review. Tell me how bad my take on Ronald Darby is or something, okay? That would be cool. Because you would be the first ever review of the Outside Insider podcast. But the Eagles, back onto to topic now, made 2 moves this week. For now. I say for now because the way this podcast typically works is, as I said, one will be signed at about Saturday at 10 a.m. The first man they brought back was Sendejo, or brought in, I should say. Andrew Sendejo, formerly, of course, of the Minnesota Vikings. It was a safety move and something where I think that's brought up plenty of discussion in itself, and it's bizarrely brought up this debate where the Eagles are getting older on defense and everyone's freaking out because they feel that the team are getting too old at defense in free agency. Because, you know, there are plenty of 23-year-old free agents walking around for dirt cheap. That's how that works. But this argument that the Eagles are getting older at defense and it's bad and it's really not good and that we should be concerned and worried that the Eagles are literally got so many players over the age of 30. I believe it's about 7 right now. Like, the trenches are getting older and more experienced. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that's what building through the draft does. That's what building through the draft does. The idea is that you bring in placeholder free agents on 1-2 year deals until you have a talent who can step up and take over. That's how this works. Because let's be honest, the Eagles have a flurry of picks, you know? And then, if it's to talk like day 1, day 2 picks, 25, 53, 57, that's a good arsenal to have going into the draft period. You could easily trade back into the second round again, or even move an asset up if you needed to. But I genuinely feel that we're massively, massively overplaying. I say we like I'm doing this, but outlets who maybe are struggling for content have gone, wow, that player's 31 and I'm 37. Now I feel old, so I'm going to write about how old they're getting. Like, no, leave it, okay? You build through the draft. That's how it works. For me, the most underrated clinically move of the Howie Roseman era was one, if you've listened to this is to the day 1 listeners now. These are the guys that have been around for maybe 2-3 years. Will know what I'm getting at here. Patrick Robinson 2017. Everyone hated it. Absolutely resented it. Despised it when it first happened. That he got into training camp, wasn't looking good, was being burned by Torrey Smith, was struggling against Alshon Jeffrey, you had the younger corners doing better, and I literally put out a film room. This is before Eagles film room were video. This is when they were strictly articles. And I went through the tape, and I said Patrick Robinson was a different corner in 2015 with the Indianapolis Colts. Because he played in the nickel, that's where his strong suit is. If he can play in the nickel, he will have a Pro Bowl level season. If the Eagles move Patrick Robinson into the nickel, where he doesn't have to worry about that long speed, where he can use those smooth hips, the back pedal, the instincts to control the middle of the field, he will have a Pro Bowl level season. And then, unintentionally, he got shifted inside because the Eagles traded for none other than my favourite cornerback, Ronald Darby. And would you believe it, Patrick Robinson balls out, has himself a phenomenal season. His most memorable play, of course, coming in the NFC Championship game, that beautiful pick six where Darby, to be fair to him, threw himself in the way of a block to make it happen, so well done on that one. And then he went on to get a bigger contract with the team he formerly played with, New Orleans. That's how this works. That's an underrated, cheap signing that comes in, and now you look at the nickel, and what are the players? Name me your starting nickel cornerback right now. You're going to be one of three parties. It will be Captain Cravon, led by myself. It will be Avonte Maddox. It will be Sidney Jones. Any of those three? Are any of those three over 25 years old? Are any of those three have more than 2 years worth of NFL experience? Do any of those three have grey hair yet? The answer is no. If you look in the trenches, the Vinny Curry signing, I genuinely think that's going to be replacing Chris Long because Long wants starting role. I don't think he'll get that in Philadelphia. I can see the Eagles kind of parting ways with him, unfortunately. We'll get to that a little bit later on. Curry's on a 1-year deal, $2.2 million. And then it's likely that, although they're very, very high on Joe Ostman, who's this phantom player that no one's heard of now for 9 months, I think they'll draft another defensive end. He'll develop underneath. And when the time comes, just like Derek Barnett, they'll sit on top of the throne. That's how building through the draft works. Look at safety. Andrew Sendejo. I'm going to say that in the accent, haven't I? You just have to do it. The man has played in 95 games, started 59 of them, which I find really weird because that's 95 backwards. And a lot of people are kicking off saying that, no, the Eagles should have got a younger safety. They should have got Adrian Phillips. And yes, they probably could have. But do you think Adrian Phillips is going to walk into a meeting with Howie Roseman and go, so, Howie, buddy old pal, can't wait to start? And he'll go, well, let's not throw that word out there. Well, what else am I going to do? I'm a starting caliber guy. I should be starting in this event. He goes, yeah, you'll be playing with Rodney McLeod in those 3 safety sub-packages. Wait, sub-packages? So you mean I'm playing, 60% of snaps? It's really hard to do 2 voices when my voice is so high-pitched. I'm just going to put that out there. Please respect this hustle. But whether it's Clayton Gedders, Jimmy Ward, Trey Boston, whoever, it's not an argument you can make that the Eagles should have got a younger safety because they're not going to want to play because they can get a bigger bag elsewhere, get a bigger role elsewhere with a longer future elsewhere. A veteran safety who suffered a season-ending groin injury in 2018, the Vikings released him to avoid a cap hit because they found their next guy underneath. Sendejo's looking for that opportunity to rebound. He's looking for that bounce back. Vinny Curry, down season, looking to bounce back. Patrick Robinson 2016, down season, looking to bounce back. That's how this mold works. That's what Howie Roseman does. Sendejo in 2017 had a career year. And a lot of people are quick to overlook that. And I know that he's seen as a reckless safety, someone that kind of flies in, which is perfect pairing with Ronald Darby. My worst nightmare right now, okay, imagine this, okay, just for a second. The Eagles are going to face some elusive receivers next year. Obviously, the Falcons are back on the schedule. They're going to have the Jets, who now have Le'Veon Bell, so that's going to be fun. Let's take Le'Veon Bell for an example, okay? Le'Veon Bell catches a screen to the left-hand side. He gets around Ronald Darby, who goes flailing like a sack of spuds, charges up the seam, and then Sendejo misses a tackle, and it's a touchdown. That wouldn't sit well with me, and I think I would probably have nightmares about it for years. However, he's seen as a strictly box safety. Sorry for the PTSD insinuation there. We're going to get back off that. But Sendejo, to me, he is seen as a strict box safety, which is a little bit bizarre considering how much Schwartz covets versatility, but he's someone that will come in and fill what Corey Graham left behind, which wasn't very much by the end of the season. And for context purposes, the Eagles' third safety played 64% of defensive snaps in 2018. The postseason the year before, 60%. And although the Eagles play that 4-3 base, they often end up taking out that third linebacker and bringing in a safety, which means you're going to need a safety over the top while Jenkins wreaks havoc. it kind of nullifies the loss of Jordan Hicks a little bit more, because Sendejo can come down and play in the middle and take out those tight ends. He's not a player that's going to be afraid of contact or be afraid to hit. I might do a film room on him if that helps. That's certainly something we can look at. But I feel that he's going to be a perfect addition because he will almost be that last line of defence that Graham wasn't. Graham was a guy that could come down and ball hawk and pick stuff out of thin air and jump routes. Sendejo is more this mean machine, gritty, will draw a million pass interference flags, but plays with the tenacity that you want. And if you can harness that, you're going to get a very productive season out of him. Especially considering how much the Eagles like to try and almost see that prevent defense, isn't it? It's bend but don't break, get them into the end zone, or red zone I should say, not the end zone, and then let your DBs shine. So I feel that's going to be a very underrated signing. I can see Sendejo being not a Patrick Robinson level, but for me, again, one of the most underrated players in 2017 was Jalen Watkins, when he was that third safety. When you had McLeod, Watkins and Graham over the top, I think Watkins was fantastic. And his development to go from a corner that moved to safety, a corner that in 2014 was having to line up against Deshaun Jackson, I think Watkins has come on leaps and bounds. He really, really has. And I was so impressed with his development in coverage. That's what this sort of thing is designed for. If you think Avonte Maddox is going to be a long-term starter at safety, get a year out of Sendejo, and if one goes down, you know it's a natural starter up top. But there is a lot of commotion in that secondary right now, and none of it is to do with veterans. It's all young guys. The trenches, sure, you can make the argument, but give that 2 months when the draft passes, when maybe trades after the draft get out of the way, some undrafted free agents come in. There's a reason Joe Ostman, I believe, was the highest paid undrafted free agent last year. Well, I mean, we don't know what that is yet, to be brutally honest with you, but it's there, apparently. This isn't an Eagles team that is going to limp out onto a field with a Zimmer frame and go, oh, we're just too old, we can't play, we're too slow. They're not building a team of budget options. It is a machine. It is a draft machine. And if the Eagles can hit on 2 of their 3 day 1 picks, or day 2 picks for that matter, then it's doing its job. Because that's what you want them to do. You want those guys to come up. Look at the value they have found in a guy like Rasul Douglas, who in every clutch situation, whether it was week 1 last year against the Falcons with a big time pick, has stepped up. Whether it was a guy like Avonte Maddox. I mean, I think the receivers have been a bit hit and miss. Matt Collins and Shelton Gibson. Skill positions haven't been their forte. Dallas got it, though. Learning under Zach Ertz. Again, don't be surprised if I take a third one this year, but I do feel that is the mentality. And this notion that the Eagles are getting older on defense and it's somewhat of a concern. It's not concerning in the slightest. If anything, it's doing the inverse. Because if you get older now, it means you get younger later. You don't want to get younger now, put out a team of kids. There is a phrase very commonly spoken in the world of English football, you know, where Charlton play and lose every week, that you can't win anything with kids. Because they don't have the experience or the composure or the leadership or all of those mental traits or physical traits to keep up with the more experienced guys in their division. You won't win trophies with kids. You have to have veterans there. You can't start with a base of younger players and then just topple on some key star free agents, because it doesn't work. It really doesn't work. And you can look at any team in the league that is willing to pay massive in free agency. And free agency is always a weird one, because the only time a player is a free agent is if a team is willing to let him go. And is that because he wants too much money? Is that because of age? Is it production? Is it injury? Sometimes it's a culmination of those things. Which brings us to Vinny Curry in a second. But just don't panic. This narrative that the Eagles are getting too old on defense is the second most barbaric thing behind that awful Carson Wentz story that came out. And I still refuse to mention the writer's name, because that was bad. But outside of that, honestly, just don't panic. If you're an Eagles fan listening to this, And you're reading these articles saying, well, that's another 29-year-old. That's Sunday will be 32 by the time the season. All right, so by the age of 31 to 32, he's what, going to lose the ability to walk? He's going to need a Zimmer frame? Does he need to be like, have a carer next to him to wipe up after? Is that what's going to happen? No. So he's not in his prime, sure, but at the age of 30, he had a career year. And I think that kind of somewhat speaks for itself. The Eagles have done a very, very stellar job in free agency so far, bar one move. And I'm trying not to let that, downgrade it too much. And I've tried to get people on this show to talk about Ronald Darby. No one will step into the ring with me to discuss that. So I'm just going to take the victory. I'm not. But it's just one of those areas where I think people get it wrong. They see the age and they don't see the context. They see a number or a stat or an article or a headline without context. And that is what I love about you guys. Whether it's the film room videos, whether it's me ranting in my bedroom, whether it's these podcasts or my articles, that you understand the context. And even if you dramatically disagree and you want to wring my neck and make sure I never make a bad cup of tea again, that you go, actually, I can see why he'd think that. He's wrong, but I can see why he'd... That's it. It's not about takes. It's not about anything else. It's about generating discussion and having fun and laughing at the fact I was called ankles for about 5 years. Also, I remember I was mocked massive. That was when I first started discovering the NFL. Like, in secondary school when I had that nickname. And people would take the mick, because I would sit down and everyone would be playing FIFA Ultimate Team. And they'd go, oh, how's Madden? And I'll go, oh my god, yeah, I got Larry Fitzgerald. And then no one would care, because no one would know who Larry Fitzgerald was. But I enjoyed it. And that was all that mattered. And it led us here to this very podcast where we're going to swiftly move on to your favourite feature, where again, for the second week in 3, okay, none of you have submitted questions. What are you doing? Alright, at Liam Jenkins 21, follow me now, and when I tweet, give me questions to answer on the pod. See, otherwise you just get this. No one likes this. I'd rather answer, why did my wife leave me? And I can't now. We did get one question though. So instead of thank you next, because there isn't a next, it's more just thank you, really. So thank you to Will Roberts, who gracefully saw this tweet, saw my cry for help so I'm not talking to myself for 45 minutes. He looked at it and he said, LJ, what do you think of the signing of Curry and a fellow English Eagles fan in Leeds? There is more than one. Okay, I am not alone in it. Okay, I know there's quite a few Ingles fans. Wow, Joe Ingles fans. Do you reckon Joe Ingles has a fan club? I reckon he does. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked. I told you this would happen. We're half an hour in. I'm very sleep deprived. I've still got to do a Nate Sudfeld film room today, so please bear with me here. Anyway, Will, what do I think of the Vinny Curry signing? I will get to that in a big topic just for you. Okay, a whole 5 to... This is what you're missing, okay? If you ask a question, I'll dedicate like 5-10 whole minutes to answering it if you're the only one. Will knows this. Be like Will. Will understands, alright? So Will has asked me what I think of the Curry signing. We'll get to that. But more importantly, a fellow English Eagles fan, or an Ingles fan in Leeds. I think that's awesome, man. Congrats on joining our sleep-deprived legion of Snorlax. That's what we're going to be called from now on. I completely respect the dedication. Honestly, thank you so much for the question. If you're ever around Devon, which I don't know why you would be, we're the opposite end of the country. We're sort of like playing My Heart Will Go On at this point. But give me a shout, or if you ever get to an Eagles game, or that's the NFL in London, anything like that, or you notice we're at the same event, hit me up. But happy to come over and say hello. That's really cool. It's always nice seeing other Eagles fans in England, because I know how hard it is to follow a team on a 5-hour time difference. And yeah, man, honestly, just thank you for your support, for listening to this podcast. It means a lot. I'll give you a little follow as well. How's that? See? You're getting all this spotlight. Okay, don't get too flustered with it. We're all friends here. But what do I think of the Vinny Curry signing? Let's dive into this one. I put an article out on this the other day that dove into it a little bit more. I'm a bit annoyed because there haven't been many moves I can make really bad analogies about in relation to former relationships or being heartbroken, and that is not very good for my brand, okay? This has not been an on-brand podcast today. However, I do think that the Vinny Curry signing, I'm not going to relate this to it, is bold take. Okay, this is where Art of the Take podcast, Spike, if you're listening, mock my voice again, sunshine. See, this one sounds deeper today, so you'll struggle with this one. This is Howie Roseman's most, I don't want to say his best move of the off-season, but it has the potential to be. That's not really a take, is it? That's just a prediction. I think the Vinny Curry signing has the potential to be the best signing of the off-season. Why, you ask? Why, Liam? Why does Vinny of Curryington, okay, someone who has spent 6 years with the Eagles, went to Tampa Bay and flopped. He wasn't very good in Tampa Bay, right? Why would he come back and be suddenly better than he was beforehand? Well, in Tampa Bay, I would agree he was very underwhelming. He posted 2.5 sacks and 21 tackles. But there was a little rumour flying around that Vinny Curry acquired. I say like he picked it up on, like, oh, there it is. I'll pick up that high ankle sprain off the floor. So Vinny Curry suffered a high ankle sprain and was rushed back to action, and that hindered his play. And I guess if you're to look at Brandon Graham, with like the first half of his season where he was recovering from like a similar sort of setback, you can see the impact that would have on his play. So I don't think that's too far-fetched to look at. And if we're really honest with ourselves, if there is any team in the NFL that knows what Vinny Curry is capable of, it's the developmental staff and the talent evaluators that spent 6 years with him, that from 2012 to 2016, if I may be wrong here, went through one scheme, changed to Chip Kelly, who then changed again, so he moved to outside linebacker, then changed back to defensive end under Doug Peterson, then won a Super Bowl, and then went to Tampa Bay. And obviously Curry, during that time, earned himself a very, very nice payday, ka-ching, money's in the bank, and the problem was the team overpaid, and I think that may be Howie's worst move today. It was a big-time mistake. If I'm Brandon Graham, I was fuming at that move. Like, Graham does everything right and Curry gets all the money. Like, no. And Curry's biggest flaw has always been finishing plays. Like, he can set it up, he can get the job almost done, and forgets to close the door. It's sort of like, okay, baking a cake. You make the... not that I cook, okay? I mean, my cooking prowess ends at about instant noodles, really. But you're making a cake, right? You've got all the batter and... Batter? You batter cake, you see what I mean? So you make all the cake mix, you put it in a tray, you put it in the oven, you walk out to work and you come back and realise you forgot to put the oven on. That is Vinny Curry. He does everything right, but can't quite get that last little thing to take him into that top tier where he deserved that kind of money. Now again, Vinny Curry is one of those, I think, case-by-case players where, because the Eagles would have seen him develop, would have seen the skill set, and they know what he brought, where, although he wasn't finishing those plays, he certainly opened up the opportunity for those around him. He enabled guys like Fletcher Cox, like Timmy Jernigan, like his running mate on the opposite side of the line at the time, to really feast and get those bigger sack numbers, because Curry ultimately would lose the instant gold medal for himself and just go, no, pass the baton to you, Brandon of Grahamton, and he would go and do it, okay? So if you're the Eagles and you've already overpaid him once, then he goes to Tampa Bay, who can't afford to keep him around at that cap number because it was just bad. I mean, let's put it this way. Before he was cut by the Eagles, it would have cost them $11 million. Oof, that's a lot of money for Vinny Curry. Then he cost the Bucks $6.5 million last year. So almost half, not quite, but almost just over half, right? And now he's signing at $2.5 million, which I think, off the top of my head, is the cheapest he's been since his rookie contract. I don't know what year. We're probably talking like 2015, maybe? Which conveniently was his big breakout, okay? And if we're treating this like a contractual value in a stock market sense, where Curry has seen his actual stock rise, or his stock's going down but the price is going up, and now the price is coming crashing back down, you're going to get value. And the whole point of a business is you buy low and you sell high, right? That's how you make money, typically. You don't make it by buying high and selling low, unless you're Liam and trying to resell trainers, in which that seems to be how everything goes. Different debate for another day. If the Eagles are confident that they can get the same production out of Vinny Curry that they did in 2017. And if we're not talking a career year, 2017 he had 3 sacks, 42 tackles, 18 quarterback hits, which was a career high. If you're telling me that you get that for $2.5 million for 1 year, yeah, like bite his arm off. Don't literally, because then he can't get the quarterback pressure. But that is a really, 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 really good deal. Really good deal. You can already see the optimism in my voice. We're not talking Ronald Darby anymore. Oh, no. We're talking, that is a bang for your buck. Like, that is pure profit. That is like buying a $5 share in Apple. This is Bitcoin. Vinny Curry is Bitcoin. When all the value goes bad and no one knows what it is, the Eagles come sweeping in, they'll mine it, get a load of money, and then probably just sell it at the end of it. Even better than that as well is we need to understand the impact of his role on the team. I think he arguably played his best football in 2017, although it wasn't his career statistical year. Played over 50% of snaps that year with the Eagles. And I think that's going to play directly into where we see him this year. The Eagles lost Michael Bennett. And although they've got Malik Jackson who can line up in a 5-tech spot, you want him to play inside alongside Fletcher Cox. So what you should see is then I guess one side of Brandon Graham and Derek Barnett, and on the other side, Vinny Curry and maybe Josh Sweat. I don't know. It depends if you want Graham and Barnett starting and then Curry as the backup. I think, if I'm honest, that would be the way I go, out of the pure basis that Barnett is your first round pick, and if Vinny Curry comes in and starts over him, that's probably not the best sign for his development, that 3 years in, he's not able to start over someone that's, oh, hello, my dog's barking, if you can hear that. There you are. Is that a higher pitch than my voice on the podcast? I don't know. If you can't hear that, just imagine my voice, but higher and yappy. But back on to Vinny Curry, I just think, yeah, that's going to be a worrying sign if you're going to have Derek Barnett come in and not be the starter. However, Curry's role is going to be pivotal, purely for the fact now that I think the Eagles can afford to let Chris Long go. Chris Long is someone that said that although he's restructured his contract, just because he's moved money doesn't mean money is made. He has to make a footballing decision. And I believe that decision wants to be he wants to start. He deserves to get starting reps. And that's understandable. Any player would want to. We're not talking like Chase Daniel level, I'm going to go and start and then back up Drew Brees and, kiss his bum for a little bit again. We're talking a player that has performed at a very high level and is a big locker room guy. And not to mention the work he does in the community sort of off the field as well. So, if the Eagles are going to pay $2.5 million for Vinny Curry, if you keep Chris Long around, I think it will get a little bit crowded, if I'm honest. Then on one side, you're going to potentially have Graham and Barnett. Barnett's going to be missing out to Graham, so you maybe have to move Long, or maybe move Curry to the right side. Then you've got Graham and Curry on one, Long and Barnett on the other, or Barnett and Long, which is still the same problem. So I don't know. If I'm honest, I think Chris Long is probably going to see that, understand that although his snaps increased, I believe from 60 to 64%, if I'm not mistaken, that's off the top of my head, that could be completely wrong. Although his snaps did increase in 2018, I don't think that will be enough to guarantee him or 50 to 56%, I should say, a starting role. So Chris Long may test free agency. He may hang out the boots and retire and focus on the tremendous work he continues to do as the Walton Payton Man of the Year. And I think that would be a very justifiable move. No one could be angry at him for that. That he's been the most incredible burst of, I guess, just human affection. Like, I mean, it's very rare that someone will join a team and put the amount of work into a local community that Chris Long has. That's special. And I think he'll always be cherished, because of that, even if he has only been with the team a short time. But overall, to answer your question, I think Vinny Curry's move, based on the fact, if the Eagles can look at that 2017 season, base 2018 on the fact, hey, you had a high ankle sprain, you're in a new scheme, it's a different team, it's very hot, we're clutching at a bit of a straw there. Maybe that's why your production was down. We know the player you can be. We were idiots before. We're not going to be idiots again. Let's get you back in. Let's repeat that season, and everyone's a winner because we're going to win another ring. I think that's perfect. Vinny Curry went on the record saying that he missed it. He missed the vibe. He missed the locker room. And some of his best friends were on the team. He's a local guy. I know he actually worked out in Jersey like during the off-season last year anyway. So it's one of those things where he's very linked to the city of Philadelphia. And it's just a win-win for the Eagles. This is like, okay, we're going to have an analogy. We're going to end it on an analogy. We have gone 39 minutes without a bad analogy, and that time ends now. This is like if you get married and you get divorced or in a long-term relationship because it just doesn't work out or the timing is wrong. You then, in 2 years' time, realise, hey, I was kind of better with them. I'm going to go back, but we can't be what we were because, you know, that's changed. And I invested too heavily. I was buying dinner every night for 5 nights of the week and it drained my bank balance. So today, we're going to keep it simple. We're going to have a fling. We're going to mess around. We're going to keep it fun and be light and friendly and enjoy ourselves and not end up accidentally getting pregnant. That wasn't related to anything in particular, by the way. I just think that was a nice little analogy to throw in. I do think, though, that's a strong move by the Eagles. They realise what they've had. Curry realised what they've had. The two have rekindled back together on a much more team-friendly deal. Everyone's a winner, and so are you for surviving 40 minutes of the Outside Insider podcast. And let's quickly get an update of how badly my March Madness is going. If you were aware, we put a free contest up on our YouTube channel, essentially looking at our March Madness bracket. So we put up saying, hey, the top 5, if there are 50 of you, will get prizes. 2 of them will be me singing down the phone Enrique Iglesias' Hero in Spanish. Se puede ser tu hero, for context. The other 3 will get prizes, like physical prizes, with first place getting a hoodie. I am rank 11th right now. I am soaring back up the leaderboard. But the man leading it, okay, is literally one of my best friends. And he's English, he has no idea about college basketball, and it's really annoying me. So if someone could please beat him, that would be fantastic. So Connor's leading, then Dre Smooth second, NL Strikers third, Something Real fourth, March Gladness, I love that name, and King David are the next guys up. So all of you guys set to win prizes at the moment. Will that change in the next few days? Maybe. Enjoy March Madness. Don't forget, please subscribe if you're new around here, guys. It really would mean the world to me. If you're on YouTube, if it's Spotify, iTunes, Spreaker, on a tape cassette where you're listening to Natalie and Brulia Torn, override it. Subscribe to this podcast. My name is Liam Jenkins, at Liam Jenkins21 on Twitter. I'll see you next time.